Hey, squirrels. Me. Even got a scrunchie that goes. Woo! My sissy's hat and Miss Cheryl's shawl. I'm just dooed up. Dooed up. Oh, golly. Forgot to turn this on. Oh, no, I didn't. It's coming. It's a coming. I'm so sorry. Totally forgot to read yesterday. Oh, and I pray I'll be able to get through this without going to sleep. I only slept a couple hours. I don't know what's going on with my sleeping. Go to bed really late and I wake up really early. So then all day long I'm going. And I'm trying to stitch. Hope y'all are having a happy Friday so far. Well, it's early. Probably aren't even out of bed yet, but by the time you see this. Anyway, God bless you all. Have a blessed day. A blessed weekend. And we have live at 5 today. Set your alarm for 5 Eastern, whatever time that is for you. Sorry, it's coming. It's a coming. Okay, chapter 17, I think is right. A chapter of accidents. Anne woke 3 times in the night and made pilgrimages to her window to make sure that Uncle Abe's prediction was not coming true about the weather. Finally, the morning dawned, pearly and lustrous, in a sky full of silver sheen and radiance, and the wonderful day had arrived. Just put my teeth in, so I'm kind of got a glue mouth. Diana appeared soon after breakfast with her basket of flowers over one arm and her muslin dress over the other, for it would not do to don it until after all the dinner preparations were completed. Meanwhile, she wore her afternoon pink print and a lawn apron, fearfully and wonderfully ruffled and frilled, and very neat and pretty and rosy she was. You look simply sweet, said Anne admiringly. Diana sighed. But I've had to let out every one of my dresses again. I weigh 4 pounds more than I did in July. And where will this end? Boy, do I know about that. Mrs. Morgan's heroines are all tall and slender. Well, let's forget our troubles and think of our mercies, said Anne gaily. Mrs. Allen says that whenever we think of anything that is a trial to us, we should also think of something nice that we can set over against it. If you are slightly too plump, you've got the dearest dimples. And if I have a freckled nose, the shape of it's all right. Do you think the lemon juice did any good? Yes, I really think it did, said Diana critically and much elated. Anne led the way to the garden, which was full of airy shadows and wavery golden lights. We'll decorate the parlor first. We have plenty of time, for Priscilla said they'd be here about 12 or half past at the latest, so we'll have dinner at 1. There may have been 2 happier and more excited girls somewhere in Canada or the U.S. at that moment, but I doubt it. Every snip of the scissors as Rose and Peony and Bluebell fell seemed to chirp, Mrs. Morgan is coming today, and wondered how Mr. Harrison could go on placidly mowing hay in the field across the lane just as if nothing were going to happen. The parlor at Green Gables was a rather severe and gloomy apartment with rigid horsehair furniture, stiff lace curtains, and white anti-macassars? Here's a word I need to look up. that were always laid at a perfectly correct angle except at such times as they clung to unfortunate people's buttons. Must be some kind of flower. Uh, Even Anne had never been able to infuse much grace into it, for Marilla would not permit any alterations. But it is wonderful what flowers can accomplish if you give them a fair chance. And when Anne and Diana finished with the room, you would not have recognized it. A giant blue bowl full of snowballs overflowed on the polished table. The shining black mantelpiece was heaped with roses and ferns. Every shelf of the whatnot held a sheaf of bluebells. The dark corners on either side of the grate were lighted up with jars full of glowing crimson peonies, and the grate itself was aflame with yellow poppies. All this splendor and color mingled with sunshine falling through the honeysuckle vines at the windows in a leafy ride of dancing shadows over walls and floor made of the usually hang on. Well, what happened? Hold on it. Made of the usually dismal little room the veritable bower of Anne's imagination, and even extorted a tribute of admiration from Marilla, who came in to criticize and remained to praise. "Now we must set the table," said Anne, in the tone of a priestess about to perform some sacred rite in honor of a divinity. "We'll have a big vase full of wild roses in the center, and one single rose in front of everybody's plate, and a special bouquet of rosebuds only by Mrs. Morgan's," an allusion to the rosebud garden, you know. The table was set in the sitting room with Marilla's finest where'd it go? Golly, my pages keep. Here we go. Table was set in the sitting room with Marilla's finest linen and the best china, glass, and silver. You may be perfectly certain that every article placed on it was polished or scoured to the highest possible perfection of gloss and glitter. Then, as the girls tripped out to the kitchen, which was filled with appetizing odors emanating from the oven where the chickens were already sizzling splendidly, Anne prepared the potatoes and Diana got the peas and beans ready. Then, when Diana shut herself into the pantry to compound the lettuce salad, Anne, whose cheeks were already beginning to glow crimson as much with excitement as from the heat of the fire, prepared the bread sauce for the chickens, minced her onions for the soup, and finally whipped the cream for her lemon pies. And what about Davy all this time? Was he redeeming his promise to be good? He was indeed, to be sure. He insisted on remaining in the kitchen, for his curiosity wanted to see all that went on. But as he sat quietly in a corner, busily engaged in untying the knots in a piece of hairy net he brought home from his last trip to the shore, nobody objected to this. At 11:30, the lettuce salad was made. The golden circle of the pies were heaped with whipped cream, and everything was sizzling and bubbling that ought to sizzle and bubble. "We'd better go and dress now," said Anne, "for they may be here by 12. We must have dinner at sharp 1, for the soup must be served as soon as it's done." Serious indeed were toilet rites presently performed in the east gable. Anne peered anxiously at her nose and rejoiced to see that its freckles were not at all prominent, thanks either to the lemon juice or to the unusual flush on her cheeks, When they were ready, they looked quite as sweet and trim and girlish as ever did any of Miss Morgan's heroines. I do hope I'll be able to say something once in a while and not sit like a mute, said Diana anxiously. All Mrs. Morgan's heroines converse so beautifully, but I'm afraid I'll be tongue-tied and stupid. And I'll be sure to say, I seen. Oh, I hate that. I haven't often said it since Miss Stacy taught here, but in moments of excitement it's sure to pop out. And if I were to say I seen before Mrs. Morgan, I'd die of mortification, and it would be almost as bad to have nothing to say. I'm nervous about a good many things, said Anne, but I don't think there's much fear that I won't be able to talk. And to do her justice, there wasn't. Anne shrouded her Muslim glories in a big apron and went down to concoct her soup. Marilla had dressed herself, and the twins looked more excited than she had ever known them to look before. At 12:30, the Allens and Miss Stacy came. Everything was going well, but Anne was beginning to feel nervous. It was surely time for Priscilla and Mrs. Morgan to arrive. She made frequent trips to the gate and looked anxiously down the lane as ever her namesake in the Bluebeard story peered from the tower casement. Suppose they don't come at all, she said piteously. Don't suppose it. It would be too mean, said Diana, who, however, was beginning to have uncomfortable misgivings on the thought. Anne, said Marilla, coming out from the parlor, Miss Stacy wants to see Miss Barry's willow-ware platter. Anne listened to the sitting room and hastened to the sitting room closet to get the platter. She had, in accordance with her promise to Mrs. Lynde, written to Miss Barry of Charlottetown asking for the loan of it. Miss Barry was an old friend of Anne's, and she promptly sent the platter out with a letter, exhorting Anne to be very careful of it, for she paid $20 for it. The platter had served its purpose at the Aid Bazaar and had been returned to the Green Gables closet, for Anne would not trust anybody but herself to take it back to town. Just look at something right quick. Goodness gracious, this is long. I'm already getting sleepy, of course. Oh, I prayed I'd be able to stay awake at least to get through a chapter. Y'all don't know how bad I feel when I forget to read. And then it'll be late at night. And I could go ahead, but then I'm like sleepy then too, so. Let's see. Oops. Now, girl. Golly, I'm lost. Ah, doggone. Well, I swan. Suppose they don't come at all. Okay, about the platter. Take it back to town. She carried the platter carefully to the front door where the guests were enjoying the cool breeze that blew up from the brook. It was examined and admired. Then, just as Anne had taken it back into her own hands, a terrific crash and clatter sound from the kitchen pantry. Oh no. Marilla, Diana, and Anne fled out, the latter pausing only long enough to set the precious platter hastily down on the second step of the stairs. When they reached the pantry, a truly harrowing spectacle met their eyes. A guilty-looking small boy scrambling down from the table with his clean print blouse liberally plastered with the yellow filling. Oh no. And on the table, the shattered remains of what had been two brave, becreamed lemon pies. Davy had finished raveling out his herring net, and he wound the twine into a ball. Then he had gone into the pantry to put it up on the shelf above the table, where he already kept a score or so of similar balls, which, so far as could be discovered, served no useful purpose save to yield the joy of possession. Davy had to climb on the table and reach over to the shelf at a dangerous angle, something he had been forbidden by Marilla to do, as he had come to grief once before in the experiment. The result in this instant was disastrous. Davy slipped and came sprawling squarely down on the lemon pies. His clean blouse was ruined for that time, and the pies for all time. It is, however, an ill wind that blows nobody good, and the pig was eventually the gainer by Davy's mischance. "Davy Keith," said Marilla, shaking him by the shoulder, "didn't I forbid you to climb up on that table?" "Didn't I? I forgot," whimpered Davy. "You've told me not to do such an awful lot of things. I can't remember them all." "Well, you march upstairs and stay there till after dinner. Perhaps you'll get them sorted out in your memory by that time. No, Anne, never you mind interceding for him. I'm not punishing him because he spoiled your pies. That was an accident. I'm punishing him for his disobedience. Go, Davy, I say." "Ain't I to have any dinner?" "Well, Davy, you could come down after dinner is over and have yours in the kitchen." "Oh, all right," said Davy, somewhat comforted. "I know Anne'll save some nice bones for me, won't you, Anne? 'Cause you know I didn't mean to fall on the pies. Say, Anne, since they are spoiled, can I take some of the pieces upstairs with me?" No lemon pie for you, Master Davy," said Marilla, pushing him toward the hall. "What shall we do for dessert?" asked Anne, looking regretfully at the wreck and ruin. "Get out a crock of strawberry preserve," said Marilla consolingly. "There's plenty of whipped cream left in the bowl for it." 1 o'clock came, but no Priscilla or Mrs. Morgan. Anne was in agony. Everything was done to a turn, and the soup was just what soup should be, but couldn't be depended on to remain so for any length of time. "I don't believe they're coming after all," said Marilla crossly. Anne, woo! I hate it when what should we have for dessert and all that? Couldn't be depended on to remain so for any length of time. "I don't believe they're coming after all," said Marilla crossly. Anne and Diana sought comfort in each other's eyes. At 1:30, Marilla again emerged from the parlor. "Girls, we must have dinner. Everybody is hungry, and it's no use waiting any longer. Priscilla and Mrs. Morgan are not coming. That's plain, and nothing is improved by this waiting." Anne and Diana set about lifting the dinner with all the zest gone out of the performance. "I don't believe I'll be able to eat a mouthful," said Diana dolefully. Nor I, but I hope everything will be nice for Miss Stacy and Mr. and Mrs. Allen's sake, said Anne listlessly. When Diana dished the peas, she tasted them, and a very peculiar expression crossed her face. Anne, did you put sugar in these peas? Yes, said Anne, mashing the potatoes with the air of one expected to do her duty. I put a spoonful of sugar in it. We always do. Don't you like it? But I put a spoonful in too when I set them on the stove, said Diana. Anne dropped her masher and tasted the peas also. Then she made a grimace. How awful! I never dreamed you'd put sugar in because I knew your mother never does. I happened to think of it for a wonder. I'm always forgetting it, so I popped a spoonful in. It's a case of too many cooks, I guess, said Marilla, who had listened to this dialogue with a rather guilty expression. I didn't think you'd remember about the sugar, Anne, for I'm perfectly certain you never did before. So I put it in a spoonful. Oh gosh, they all did. The guests in the parlor heard peal after peal of laughter from the kitchen, but they never knew what the fun was about. There were no green peas on the dinner table that day, however. Well, said Anne, sobering down again with a sigh of recollection, we'll have the salad anyway, and I don't think anything has happened to the beans. Let's carry the thing in and get it over. It cannot be said that dinner was a notable success socially. The Allens and Miss Stacy exerted themselves to save the situation, and Marilla's customary placidity was not noticeably ruffled. But Anne and Diana, between their disappointment and the reaction from their excitement of the forenoon, could neither talk nor eat. Anne tried heroically to bear her part in the conversation for the sake of her guest, but all the sparkle had been quenched in her for the time being. And in spite of her love for the Allens and Miss Stacy, she couldn't help thinking how nice it would be when everybody had gone home and she could bury her weariness and disappointment in the pillows of the east gable. Therefore, it's an old proverb that really seems. Wait a minute. There is an old proverb that really seems at times to be inspired. It never rains, but it pours. The measure of that day's tribulation was not yet full. Just as Mr. Allen had finished doggone it. Returning thanks, there arose a strange, ominous sound on the stairs, as of some hard, heavy object bounding from step to step. Oh my gosh, that's the platter. Finishing up with a grand smash at the bottom. Oh no. Everybody ran out into the hall and gave a shriek of dismay. At the bottom of the steps lay a big pink conch shell and big pink conch shell amid the fragments of what had been Miss Barry's platter. And at the top of the stairs knelt a terrified Davy, getting down with wide eyes open at the house. Davy did it. At the havoc. Oh my gosh. Davy, said Marilla ominously, did you throw that conch down on purpose? No, I never did, whimpered Davy. I was just kneeling here, quiet as a mouse, to watch you folks through the banisters, and my foot struck that old thing and pushed it off. And I'm so awful hungry, and I do wish you'd lick a fella and have done with it, instead of always sending him upstairs to miss all the fun. Don't blame Davy, said Anne, gathering up the fragments with trembling fingers. It was all my fault. I set that platter there and forgot all about it. I'm properly punished for my carelessness. Oh, yeah, I don't have to stop. I'm just sitting here about to go to sleep. I'm so sorry. Golly. I'll come back on today if I can and finish. But if not, I'll do it tomorrow. Love you all. Have a great day. Hope to see you live at 5. Please set an alarm. I'd love to have you. Be sweet. Don't be ugly. Bye-bye.